Hello, everybody. Let me make sure we got things going here.
Be able to bring this curriculum to our summit this year. This program is in the perspective of a driver. So this was a missing link to road safety education regarding bicyclists for a long time. And so this educates all drivers on how to safely share the road. At the end of this presentation, there'll be opportunity for you to take an exam to earn certification for bicycle-friendly driver. Upon completion of that exam, you will receive a certificate of completion and also a sticker from BWNC that you can use on your vehicle or anywhere else that you'd like to show that you've participated in this program. I want to give a big shout out to and thank you to the City of Fort Collins for creating the Bicycle Friendly Driver Program and for sharing it with the League of American Bicyclists for the rest of us to be able to adapt and share with our communities. And so without any further ado, we're going to hold off on answering questions until the end of the presentation, just to make sure that we cover all the slides today. So be patient. If you send something to the chat box, we will make sure that we get to those questions at the end. Okay. So whose lane is it? Sharing the road with bicyclists. So some of the things that we're going to talk about as motorists is driving with bicyclists. Topics: sharing the road, infrastructure, common crashes, taking the lane. Is this legal or not? What we teach cyclists, and then also we'll answer your questions, as I said at the end, and then we will give you the link to take the online examination. So, driving with bicyclists. How many of you drive a car or a pedestrian? You ride a bike, ride a bus, you rollerblade. So for many of us, we can check all those boxes. It's important just to keep in mind that we're all people. And these are some examples of some people that I know. And just to remind yourselves that you know me, I'm someone's mom, someone's dad, someone's brother, someone's sister, son, or daughter, and I ride a bike. We are one community of cyclists, motorists, and pedestrians. In our top picture at the left there, that's the son of our Vice President of BWNC, Richie Roselle, and also with Flying Bike Tours. So bicyclists come in all different forms. So sometimes it is parents and with their children that may be out just for recreation, or maybe they're riding for transportation to get to and from school, to get to and from their jobs. The top right picture on the tandem, that is someone that I had the opportunity to work with when I was leading bike tours across the United States. The fella in the back stoker position is a visually impaired cyclist, so a blind cyclist. And he had the opportunity to pedal across America, and I had the pleasure of being able to help him in that task. But I'll never forget, about 3 weeks into our ride, of him explicitly saying to me, "Deanna, I don't understand. You know, cyclists are treated like second-class citizens. from what I've seen in riding through the states here in America. And his response was based on the interactions we've had with motorists on our route to that point. The picture at the bottom left, that's a picture of myself with Larissa Thompson. She's a news anchor for WCCB Charlotte CW. I had the honor of doing a bike safety segment with her last year. And she was excited to get back into bicycling as a mode for fitness and for wellness. And then the bottom right picture is a good friend of mine, Brian. He completed recently in the last year, the 6 Gap ride. It was last year. That was 104 miles, over 11,200 feet of vertical climbing. And I'll never forget the caption he made with this picture was, just because you're in a wheelchair does not mean you can't live your life. And Brian, when coronavirus put him out of work, as it did for many people across the country, he decided to go back to back for 2 weeks of doing 500-mile weeks on his bicycle. So as many people took to the roads and decided to get reacquainted with their bike or to use that opportunity to ride more. And so with that comes this responsibility for motorists for us to truly understand, how do we share the road with bicyclists? Because there are many people out there accessing the streets, and we need to know how to do this safely. So sharing the road. So sharing the road, a bicycle is a vehicle, and it is required by law to follow all rules of the road. And it's good to remember that cyclists fare best when they act and are treated as drivers of vehicles. So North Carolina defines a bicycle as a vehicle. So that means that bicycle riders generally have the same rights and responsibilities as motorists when they're riding on the road. A bicycle is not, however, a motor vehicle, which the law defines separately as a special class of vehicle. A bicycle rider following traffic rules as closely as possible is the most predictable to motor vehicle traffic. But please remember, however, it is not always possible for a bicycle to act as a motor vehicle. And let's talk about infrastructure. Okay, innovative ways to communicate. Innovative approaches to communicate direction of travel, intersection positioning, and where to expect bicyclists. So the next few slides, we're going to go over some of the different types of infrastructure and basically what those mean. You may not have some of this type of infrastructure in the city that you live in our small city of Banner Elk. We don't have this type of infrastructure, but it doesn't mean that you won't travel someplace else within our state that has these designs. And so it's important as a motorist that when you enter into those cities and those areas that you're familiar with what these, what this type of infrastructure means and what to expect when you're sharing the road with a bicyclist. So that first image on the left, the bike boxes. So those are generally found at intersections. Bicyclists are generally being given priority at an intersection, and they're encouraged to get into the front of the line of traffic in that bike box. The idea is that bicyclists can filter forward and be more visible at the front of the line and get into position to make their next move. Bicyclists can enter the bike box from the bike lane when traffic is stopped and positions themselves for the next move. The next picture is of a Toucan Crossing. So that's a pedestrian crossing that also allows bicycles to be ridden across. So the two can cross together, and that's where that name comes from for that one. The next image is of shared line markings, Sharrows. So the shared line markings are placed in the travel lane to indicate where people should preferably cycle. And it assists the cyclists and motorists of the bicycle location and helps reduce wrong way bicycling and encourage safe passing by motorists. And then that last image of a bike signal looks very much like our lights for motorists. It's a 3-lens signal head. It facilitates bicyclists crossings for roadways, making crossing intersections safer for bicyclists. And it basically clarifies when to enter the intersection, and it also helps to restrict conflicting vehicle movements. More on infrastructure, directional paint. So, and you see that top left image, basically that directional paint is helping to guide the bicyclists. It also provides a visual guidance for motorists as to where the bicyclists might be traveling. Top right picture is of a protected bike lane. So this is created when a simple stripe isn't enough. The bike lane is protected either by flexible posts, parked cars, which is not always the best option, concrete planters, or other physical barriers. Then your bottom left, you have what is a buffered bike lane. So it's basically an additional bike lane stripe or a hatched area that's marked off on the road to provide greater level of separation between the motor vehicles and the bicyclists. This can become a dangerous area oftentimes for bicyclists because with that extra space, oftentimes we'll find that motorists will want to park in that area. And then also on the bicyclist side, we'll find that because it is a bigger amount of space, bicyclists will tend to group up more and ride in those areas. And then that last image, the bottom right, the roundabouts, created to help reduce traffic speed. It's designed to serve all road users. So some bicyclists may decide to ride through the roundabout, but others may, generally less experienced riders, will exit the street and proceed through there as a pedestrian. Okay, and some more of infrastructure examples. Again, more of the directional paint in that bottom or in the left image. The bike lane, giving direction of the change in the position of the bike lane. The middle image of shared use pathways. These are popular in a lot of areas. It's important for bicyclists to remember that that is a path that's shared with pedestrians, and pedestrians have the right of way. And so this is not an area for bicyclists to head out for a training ride. And then we have the Contraflow Lanes, examples on the far right side. So basically the Contraflow Lanes are bike lanes that allow bicyclists to ride in the opposite direction of motor vehicle traffic. So they can be, they're two-way, they can be two-way like the top right image. Contraflow design can also introduce some conflict points because motorists may not be expecting a bicyclist oncoming from the other opposite direction. Okay, what's the cause? So we have here obviously a bicycle that's in pretty bad shape. This is actually a bicycle that I arrived on the scene of, and unfortunately had the responsibility of cleaning up what has happened afterwards. So local crash data, approximately 1,000 crashes a year involve a bicyclist and a motorist. Approximately half of those crashes occur at intersections or driveways. 26% involve wrong way riding. And on average, about 20 are killed and an additional 60 are seriously injured. Children and young adults are the most frequent victims. In going over some more crash data from NCDOT, there were approximately 248,204 total average crashes per year from 2013 to 2017. That data illustrates that in general, yes, bicycling is safe. A small percentage of crashes take place in our state involve a person on a bicycle. However, we cannot forget that cyclists are more vulnerable road users. It's important to point out that intersections and driveways are where all people need to pay the most attention, and that wrong way riding contributes to a large percentage of crashes. In this data, falls and other events involving only bicyclists that might be documented in medical databases were not included. And even though our past research indicates that bicycle motor vehicle crashes represent approximately 20 to 30% of all injuries to bicyclists, it is clear that the most of the serious and fatal bicyclist injuries do involve motor vehicles. So this leads us to the next point in our slide. National crash data. 50% of bicyclist motorist crashes are due to motorist errors. What's the cause? The takeaway, in most crashes, both road users could have done something different. So most of the time, both road users can do something to prevent a crash. It's less important about who ultimately gets the ticket and more important that we all can watch out for each other and ourselves. So the rest of this presentation, we're going to show you how we can do that as motorists. Okay, what do you see here? Legal or not? We see a bike lane, we see a cyclist and a motorist, and a cyclist traveling the opposite direction of the motorists. Okay, not legal. So this slide being labeled as not legal assumes that the direction of the travel of this bike lane is the same as the motorized vehicle's direction of travel. So it is not a contraflow bike lane like we discussed in the earlier slides, but it should be noted that counterflow reverse direction of travel lanes do exist and could be part of your area's network. Common crashes. 50% right angle, more than half of these involve a bicyclist riding against traffic. How do we avoid this? As a motorist, look right at all driveways and intersections. Scenario 1. Bicycle, you see, is traveling eastbound in the westbound traffic lane. Motor vehicle in orange has made a right turn from a southbound lane into the westbound lane. The bicyclist in green was ejected and slammed into the windshield of a motor vehicle, shattering the windshield. So what could be done differently? As a bicyclist, we need to ride with the flow of traffic. So in that scenario, in the eastbound lane. As a motorist, we can look to the right at all intersections and driveways in case there's a road user going against traffic. Taking the lane. Legal or not? What do we think? We have a roundabout here. 3 cyclists, 2 are riding side by side and 1 behind the other. Legal. So do you think that a bicyclist should be courteous and ride single file? By doing this, the bicyclist sacrifices some of their own safety by allowing a motorist to pass in the same lane. It is not necessarily easier for motorists to pass a bicyclist riding single file. For example, if we had 6 to 8 bicyclists riding 2 abreast, they're about the length of 2.5 cars. At single file, they are twice that length, and they would require more time to drive around. Please keep in mind that on almost all roads, riding 2 abreast is perfectly legal in North Carolina. Some municipalities may have a no more than 2 abreast ordinance that are often mistaken, requiring single file riding. Why bicyclists take the lane? Well, oftentimes it's the safest place for them to be. Other times because riding on sidewalks is sometimes illegal and unusually safe. Have you ever told a bicyclist to get on the sidewalk? Oftentimes it's the place that they need to be to prevent being buzzed or sideswiped. Oftentimes, bicyclists can't trigger a light or signal because there's not enough weight there. So they need to take the lane to do so. And they'll take the lane to prepare for a left-hand turn. Another scenario, legal or not. 2 bicyclists, one in the shoulder, one on the other side of the white line, looks to be getting ready to pass the other bicyclist. Legal. So in a no passing zone, as we're getting ready to discuss here, a driver vehicle can overtake a person on a bicycle if the bicycle is proceeding in the same direction. And talking again, why bicyclists take the lane? They'll often take the lane because there's debris in that shoulder, or if the lane is too narrow to share, or to be more visible, increase motorist awareness, and to avoid the door zone. And we're going to talk more about that door zone. Scenario 2. We have a truck in orange and the bicyclist in green. Bicyclist was traveling westbound in the far right part of the westbound traffic lane. The motor vehicle was traveling westbound in the westbound traffic lane. The motor vehicle driver tried to pass the bicyclist while traveling on the bridge by going into the eastbound travel lane. Oncoming eastbound traffic forced the truck back into the westbound lane, and the motor vehicle collided with the bicyclist. In that scenario, what could have been done differently? Cyclists could have taken the lane to force the motorist, the truck to change lanes and to wait. The motorist could have waited for a safe and legal place to pass. And keep in mind, the bicyclist may use the full lane. And here we go with the door zones. Keeping cyclists safe. In this slide, it's a picture of a local street where a severe door zone crash occurred. So let's just try this exercise. Everyone raise their right hand and pretend that you're sitting in your car on the driver's side seat of your car. So what I want you to do is pretend that you're reaching over to open your door with your right hand. What happens when you do that? When you reach over, it forces your shoulders and your body to automatically turn and look left. If you can remember as a motorist to just simply exit the driver's seat by opening your door with your right hand, then that will help trigger for you to look to see if there's a bicyclist coming and to avoid hitting that cyclist with your door. That's something that we call the Dutch reach. How to avoid, use that opposite hand trick. Common crashes. 15% approach turn or left cross. Almost half, 49%, result in a serious injury. Avoiding the left cross, tips for sharing the road as a motorist. If there is oncoming traffic, slow down, stop and wait to turn until traffic clears, including looking for bicyclists. Watch for oncoming bicyclists, as it may be difficult to judge their speed and distance. And watch for oncoming bicyclists in the shadow of a vehicle. Legal or not. In this scenario, we have traffic and we've got a double yellow line and a bicyclist riding on the shoulder. Legal or not? Is it legal for that car to cross over that double yellow line? Legal. In a no passing zone, a driver of a vehicle can overtake a person on a bike if the bicycle is proceeding in the same direction of the driver, and if the driver's at least 4 feet of space provides that while passing the bicyclist, or completely enters the opposite or enters the left lane. And it's important to make sure that the bicyclist is not making a left turn. When passing a bicyclist. So reviewing of some tips for sharing the road. Treat bicyclists as you would any other slow-moving vehicle. Motorists may cross the double yellow line to allow 4 feet so long as it is clear. If there is no oncoming traffic, slow down and wait to pass until traffic clears. Return to your lane when the bicyclist can be seen in your mirror. So North Carolina traffic law requires that a driver of any vehicle overtaking another vehicle proceeding in the same direction shall pass at least 2 feet to the left and shall not drive back into the right side of the highway until safely clearing that vehicle that they're overtaking. We all know that 2 feet is not enough clearance for a motorist to pass a bicyclist. And I think it's important to just remember that that is at least 2 feet. And oftentimes more distance is going to be necessary in passing. So it's best to remember just to change lanes to pass. But specifically in that no passing zone, a driver of the vehicle can overtake the person on the bike if they're proceeding in the same lane, in the same direction, and that the driver provides at least 4 feet of clearance when passing that bicyclist. Common crashes. 14% occur during a right hook or an overtaking turn. We see that a bicyclist and the motorist is sharing the lane. The bicyclist needs to proceed straight and the motorist is turning right. When passing a bicyclist, tips for turning at intersections. So bicyclists may take the lane to avoid being right hooked by cars making that right-hand turn. As a motorist, check for the bicyclist approaching from behind. Move into the bike lane if there is one to complete a right-hand turn after you've already looked to make sure that the lane is clear. And please avoid overtaking a bicyclist and turning right unless it's safe to do so. Legal or not. So we have a motorist and a bicyclist sharing the lane. We have a double yellow line. And we have bicyclists that are riding single file and to the right as they practically can, given the debris that is in that shoulder. This is legal. So keep in mind that a bicyclist staying to the right in their lane is accommodating the motorists that are following them, making it easier to see when it's safe to pass and easier to execute the pass. But please remember that as a motorist, you are only going to make that pass when there was abundant clearance and no oncoming traffic in the opposing lane. When drivers pass bicyclists without enough distance between themselves and the bicyclists, or without enough sight distance ahead, the maneuver can be dangerous. So it all depends on the situation that you have and the size of your lane, whether legal or not. Again, it's always safer to change lanes to pass a bicyclist. And in the state of North Carolina, you can cross over the double yellow line to change lanes to pass the bicyclists. When passing a bicyclist, check for bicyclists in your blind spots. When you're driving a larger vehicle, allow extra room for mirrors, extended wheels, trailers, and large profile vehicles can create a wind blast. So just keep in mind when passing a bicyclist, motorists, if the conditions are such that you cannot pass the group of bicyclists safely within 2 feet of clearance, which is, as we just stated, is most of the time, you need more than that, then you still have the obligation to pass safely. If the safe passing distance is more than 2 feet, then allow more than 2 feet. And again, it's just best to change lanes to pass. Passing a group of bicyclists. Pass when there's abundant clearance, no oncoming traffic. More than 2 feet is required when the situation calls for it. And just tap the horn, but avoid blasting it. Other situations. These are just other examples of things that can cause difficulty for motorists to see bicyclists while driving. So distracted driving, whether you're looking down at your phone, eating, you want to avoid doing those things. It just takes 1 second to look down and not realize that a bicyclist is in your lane or coming up in your lane and for a collision to happen. Sun glare and fog is another issue. Avoid parking in bike lanes. Children on bikes, children are unpredictable. So expect when you see a children on a bike riding in the area that you're driving in, go ahead and slow down. Expect that that child may do something unpredictable and travel into your lane. Speed, control your speed, slow down. If you're coming upon a bicyclist, slow down your speed. Again, anything could happen. So it's best just to slow the speed to discourage the opportunity for a collision to occur. Illegal courtesies. That's when a motorist is trying to be courteous, but does something unexpected or illegal. So example, stopping in traffic to allow a bicyclist to turn left. So we want to encourage motorists to not give illegal courtesies, such as stopping in traffic, and that cyclists as well not take the illegal courtesies. So you may find that you may stop traffic to allow bicyclists to turn where normally that bicyclist would need to wait, just like a driver of a motor vehicle, driver of a vehicle, and they may wave you on, continue on. It's just best that everyone follows the rules of the road. Okay, what we teach bicyclists. We teach bicyclists to drive your bike. So just like if you were driving a car, control or take the lane when it's appropriate or needed to do so to remain safe. Be visible and predictable. Be visible. That includes wearing bright clothing, having definitive arm signals when you're riding, to communicate, make eye contact with the motorists that are in the lane that you're sharing, and be predictable. So being predictable also means that staying your course. Though we encourage bicyclists to not weave in and out of empty parking places, even though as a motorist, you may feel like, you know, if there is a online parking and there are no vehicles there, why won't that bicycle get over into the side of the road? Because that's not a travel lane. And so it's best for the bicyclists to remain predictable and hold their line in that travel lane. Right on the right, stop at all signs and lights, obey that first come, first serve rule at intersections, and yield when changing lanes. Choose correct intersection positioning. And something that I like to share that is shared in the ride guide, North Carolina Ride Guide, if you all are not familiar with it, with Bike Laws, second edition. I encourage everyone to give that a read. But something that I like to share with bicyclists that comes from that is as a bicyclist, you have the absolute right to use the road as you wish. Within the rules of the road, you have an obligation to others, including other bicyclists who will share your reputation. So use your rights wisely. Dues for bicyclists. Use of hand signals. So you see from the image here, we have the bicyclist on the far left, extending the arm, pointing out to signal a left turn. We have the next bicyclist to the right of that one with the hand up. That's the older traditional for making a right hand turn signal. We have the bicyclist with the hand down indicating that they are stopping. And then the bicyclist to the right with the right arm extended to demonstrate they are making a right turn. Again, bicyclists being predictable, using those hand signals is the best practice. Key points. So treat bicyclists as drivers of vehicles. Both road users can take action to avoid bike car crashes. Pay special attention at intersections and driveways. Understand when and why cyclists take the lane. The safest way to pass a bicyclist is to change lanes. And please remember that roadway users are all people. Share the road to keep people safe. And we can't reiterate enough that the safest way to pass a vehicle or bicyclist is to change lanes. And just remember that a person on a bicycle has the equal right to the roadway and is not required or expected to get out of the way of motorists. A person on a bicycle has the right to occupy the travel lane. Okay, Terry, so we'll go ahead and move to questions.
Sure. I'm going to lean on Tom to help us on that.
Okay.
Let's see here.
Oops. Okay, so as I'm trying to
Sure, I'll help you. I'll
get
help
through.
scroll
Yep.
through here. I on the question you had a Q&A question about lowering speed saves lives. So I offered up some links in that one. Let's see.
Perfect. I see on here someone had asked, how does someone get certified to teach this type of course and bring this back to their organization? That's a great question. You do need to be an LCI, so League Certified Instructor with the League of American Bicyclists to teach this course. And it's best to access bikeleague.org to find out when there would be a LCI certification class in your area to be able to then have access to not only the bicycle friendly driver presentations, but also to the smart cycling presentations as well.
Great, thanks. A lot of conversation about the 4-foot passing zone and the requirements of that, the change lane to pass. And that really is a confusing piece, but can you talk a little bit more what you know for North Carolina?
Sure. So North Carolina passing law is a 2-foot passing law. Most states have adopted a 3-foot passing law. Obviously 2 feet, we know that that's not enough, significant enough space, especially when you consider things can happen when a bicyclist may need to avoid a rock or a pothole in the road, broken glass, anything could happen. So, but in the last several years, there was a 4-foot passing law that was adopted for the double yellow no passing zone. So in those areas, especially this is really prevalent in our area, Northwestern North Carolina. We don't have bike lanes in our area here in Banner Elk, and a lot of no passing lanes. And so we find oftentimes that motorists will try to squeeze in between a bicyclist and an oncoming vehicle, or squeeze past a bicyclist on a blind curve. But you are legally allowed to cross over when it's safe, when there is no oncoming traffic, and when there is a sight path. You can cross the yellow line to double yellow to be able to avoid hitting that bicyclist. And so, and if you can pass, if the lane is wide enough for you to pass within the same lane, that needs to be 4 foot of space.
Great. I know it's as clear as mud in many cases, but it's often really associated with the first come first serve notion, and that's the foundation for many of the responsibility for the drivers to understand the rules of the road. If we understand that bicycles are vehicles, then you would never do that to another vehicle in much the same way that you talked about buzzing cyclists or passing within
Exactly.
the same lane. That's a real challenge to kind of make a direct association, and that's what these courses try to do, is really help educate the drivers, because the cyclists, and for the most part, are generally doing the same thing, because the right thing, because they were there first in many respects, and doing what it takes to stay safe by riding with traffic, by riding staying to the right of the road as practicable, and riding two abreast when it's safe to do so. And those are the things that we really are the foundation for safe cycling on the road.
Exactly. I see a couple questions about using action cameras to capture driver and cyclist interactions. That has become very popular, especially in the last 5 years. As motorists, you do need to be cautious. There are more and more bicyclists that are placing on their bicycles cameras, and oftentimes it's a light camera combination, and they can be placed for the front of the bike and the rear of the bike, and they will record their entire ride during their commutes and their training sessions, especially if they're in areas where they're finding that they're getting a lot of close calls and buzz people just buzzing past them in the lanes. And so cyclists are using those cameras to take still shots of license plates and reporting them and using them, especially if there's been a hit and run and a motorist has not stopped.
Yes, and there's a great little new camera called the Insta360 that does front and back all at the same time now. So
Yes. Yeah.
there is some questions about, and it goes both ways on both sides of the coin, about reporting bad drivers and reporting bad cyclist behavior. Before I turn it over to you for an explanation,
Mhm.
on the bad driver behavior, if you're on a numbered road, we suggested that you contact Star HP and report it with a highway patrol, so that unless you know the municipality that you're riding in, it's an important kind of record keeping that happens. But again, you would need to contact your 911 operator and give descriptive terms of your location, your license plate, and the driver and vehicle if you're able to do that, just as a foundation piece. I know we've got lots of questions coming in now. Um, we also want to kind of talk about the notion, and just as a reminder, that was the Insta360 camera, light portable camera that can shoot both front and rear at the same time. There's a significant difference, and Deanna, forgive me for taking
Mhm.
over here for just a
Oh,
minute
that's okay. That's all right, Terry.
to give you a break in your presentation.
Mhm.
Um, there's a significant difference between reporting a cyclist behavior and reporting a driver's behavior. The consequence of error, the consequence of error for a cyclist and a driver are completely different. A consequence of error for a driver means a loss of life, potentially, of a cyclist, of a walker, of a person in a wheelchair. Those kinds of significant consequence of error driving a 1 ton, 2 ton, 3 ton, 10 ton vehicle are far different than the consequence of error of a lightweight personal vehicle striking a car and injuring the driver of a car. So the consequence of error needs to be associated directly with the type of, either it's a nuisance complaint or a safety complaint. And that's really what we want to kind of, as an advocacy organization, understand the difference between those two. We know that there has been a pedestrian that was killed by a cyclist, I think in California. It might be 4, maybe 5 years ago, but since that time, I don't have a record of any cyclist killing a driver or killing another pedestrian in America since then. So the consequence of error for riding a bike, even a poorly behaving bike, is far less than the consequence of error of distracted driving, drunk driving, careless driving, reckless driving on our roads. So I'm taking that position from an advocacy role here. So my apologies if it offends or is a bit pointed, but we also live in a state where there is a rule and a law called contributory negligence, and that's a real situation that affects the rights of road users, so that by consequence your presence means that you contributed to the crash or incident, and I don't think that's an appropriate equitable law to be in place, and we're one of the last states in America to have that still on our books. So with that, kind of got to go through and see if I've given enough time to um, gather the questions together. Um, there was also about lights. Are you prepared to kind of mention about the light responsibility for North Carolina, Deanna? Or?
Yeah, so it's required that you have front and rear, so reflectors. So there's been a lot of, oftentimes people are confused with the terminology that's listed as far as reflectors and lights. And so at night, you're required to have a front light that can be seen from 300 feet away. And also it's recommended that you have a rear light as well. If you don't have a rear light, you can use reflective clothing, but it has to be able to be visible from 300 feet away. So as a, so I'm a bicyclist. I also drive a car. I ride a bike for fitness, but I also ride a bike for transportation as well. I use lights during the day and at night. I just feel like I'm safer that way and more visible to motorists.
Great, Deanna. I like that. And just remind me again, what are the responsibility for the lights to be seen on a cyclist or a pedestrian?
Yeah, so from 300 feet away, it needs to be visible at night, especially to have that front light on there. And it's recommended that you have a rear light, but if you don't have a rear light, you must have reflective clothing that can be seen from 300 feet away.
And I also want to make it clear that in state law for operating a motor vehicle, the motor vehicle must have operable lights that can see a person
Mhm.
in the dark at 200 feet. So there's no related conversation in the law about that person has to have reflective gear, has to have lights, or the color of his or her skin must be a certain type. They have to be recognized by the motor vehicle at 200 feet. An interesting dynamic that the responsibility of a cyclist is to be seen at 300 feet, and the responsibility of the driver's headlights has to recognize a human at 200 feet. Those are the kinds of um, disconnects in our law, that the motorist behavior has a certain responsibility. The cyclist and pedestrian behavior has to have a certain responsibility. And those are those kinds of conflicts that are in place. And that's why the importance of this program of motorist training comes into play, about the responsibility and the consequence of error associated with making a mistake while driving or operating a motor vehicle. So let's see, lots of conversations about lights. Where do we go from here, Deanna? Do you want to have we gone through enough of the program to share the test that goes along with this, and how do we proceed here?
Yeah, so I think to be able to allow time for those who do want to get the certification, we've kind of fit, into the program 30 minutes to allow it. It probably won't take anyone 30 minutes to take it, but we give you that 30 minutes just in case. It's best that if you do want to test, to do that now while the information is fresh in your heads. So, and I do believe that Heidi is going to share the link. I've created a Microsoft form to be able to take the test virtually. And she's going to share that link with everybody. There are 14 questions. The first two, 1 and 2, is going to be an opportunity for you to put in your first and last name and today's date of taking the bicycle friendly driver test. And all information will be forwarded back to me once you complete the exam. And then we'll reach out to you within the next week in regards to getting your certificates to you and get some stickers mailed off in the future as well. And if anybody has any further questions that we did not get to discuss here, feel free to email me at acklind@lmc.edu. And if Heidi, if you would put that on there as well, I'd be happy to answer any more questions.
Sure. We've got well over 100 participants in this training today, so it's
Awesome.
a very popular session. So I'm hesitant to open up all 100 microphones all at once, but if you do have a question, you can raise your hand and we will open up your microphone, but just to give you a few minutes. So this will be a self-test, right? So we'll be able to let folks go. They'll be able to complete the test, submit the form, and then that'll be it today, right?
Right, correct. So we will close down this presentation, click on the link that will be provided, and it will immediately take you to the form, and you answer each question. It's multiple choice, and submit the form. And then you should receive an email notification saying that your form was received.
Deanna, can you repeat where you submit the form? I'm sorry, I was answering another question when you said that.
It automatically will just come back to me.
Oh,
so
okay.
if you provide that link, at the end of that form, it'll give you the option to submit. You submit, and then upon submitting, each participant should receive an email confirmation saying that their form was received.
I really like the fact that we're taking a different approach and making sure that we complement our cycling education classes and courses with a driver education class and course. I think it goes both ways, and I'm really proud of you, Deanna, for taking this on this year. And we've had some great legacy leadership in Stephen Goodrich in the past, and it's just you're standing on the shoulders of giants, and it's an amazing filling of some big shoes. So thank you, Deanna, for this. I really am impressed and admire you for your presentation today. Again, we'll do a last call for any questions. And we've got some great information in the chat, and I'm not going to shut the chat down immediately, but this will end our session for today as official for the Bicycle Friendly Driver Program. So we'll release that 30 minutes for you to take that test on your own if you like. I'm also going to keep the chat open for just a few more minutes to see if we can get through a couple of conversations. But I hope everybody who is here today has a chance to join us for our 5 o'clock to 6:30 social hour tonight. So I really would like to engage in a variety of conversation about your experiences today. We're also going to be showing a couple of videos and imagery around some of the calls to the public that we've had over the past couple of months to support cycling and tell stories about cycling and walking in North Carolina. So come back and enjoy that social hour at 5 o'clock. Otherwise, thanks, Deanna. And we'll stick by for just a few more minutes.
Somebody said they couldn't get into the link. I don't know who else is having a problem. I thought I posted it correctly, but I just sent it again.
That's a great.
I'm looking for it in the chat right now.
Yeah, I was able to get in. I just copied all in the chat from the HTTPS. So
thank you. I clicked on it and it took me directly to the form. So hopefully everyone, before you close out the chat room, go ahead. If you plan on taking the test, click on that link now. And feel free to use any information that you may have on you or available to you to answer any questions that you may not remember from our discussion.
Yeah, we are planning, at least on my notes, we indicate we're going to be starting our social at 5 o'clock. And absolutely, we're going to keep this chat open just in case. Deanna, you're welcome to stick around, but I'll stop recording and keep the chat open just in case there are any questions while people take the test. Is that okay?
Oh, that's fine. And I see there, Heidi, thank you. There were a few questions. I'm trying to read back through the chat questions. People ask me about the color of the lights. Is this important for a bicyclist? And yes, it is. So your front light should be a white light. Your rear light should be red. Again, that's what's most relatable to motorists. On a car, we have white lights in the front, red in the rear. So when a motorist comes up on a bicyclist, they see a red light, they know that they're staring at the backside of a bicyclist who is traveling with them in that lane, as opposed to if they see a white light, they're going to think that there's a bicyclist traveling against traffic. And so Heidi did list there directly from NCDOT, the requirements there. So lighted lamp on the front, and again, must be seen from 300 feet away. Thank you for doing that, Heidi.
Great, thanks. And we have some folks stopping and dropping off, so we'll go ahead and close our videos down, and we'll
Awesome.
keep it on mute for just a few minutes more, or keep it unmuted for a few minutes more, but we'll definitely keep the chat open.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Thanks
And
for
Al,
coming, everybody.
yep. Al, I'll get you that information about the live stream. I did make this live stream today. On YouTube for folks.